He took offense and decided to file for divorce after I went out with my boss rather than him. It's simply absurd how your entire life can fall apart after you make a seemingly innocuous choice. Sincerely, I'm at a loss for what to do. My marriage is in danger of disintegrating because I believed I was doing something insignificant and innocuous to pique my husband's curiosity for privacy's sake. Let's call my hubby Danny instead. Danny and I have been married for approximately 4 years, and I am also 28. Our relationship has always been positive, steady, and even joyful. However, Danny has always, regardless of the situation, he never becomes agitated or jealous. I initially thought it was fantastic. Every woman wants a boyfriend that is so confident in their relationship that he never questions her. Isn't that right? Danny has total faith in me. Most people would kill for that foundation, wouldn't they? I told myself for a long time that it was ideal. No arguments about trivial envy, no charges, no insecurity, just strong trust. But as time went on, I became aware that something crucial but subtle was lacking. I wanted to believe that he was completely enamored with me and that he couldn't picture his life without me. Rather, Danny's unwavering composure began to grow apathetic. I realized that seemed dramatic. But give me a chance. He was a wonderful husband in every other aspect. So it wasn't that he didn't love me. He always made time for date evenings, encouraged me in my job, and recalled small details about me that demonstrated his concern. However, I began to feel as though I could emotionally disappear and he wouldn't even blink. All I would receive if I went out with my girlfriends and returned late was a friendly warning to be careful and have a good evening. He would laugh and dismiss it as insignificant if I told him that someone had made advances on me at the pub. I began to get the impression that he was completely unaffected by other people finding me beautiful. The emotion persisted even after I convinced myself that I was being ungrateful, and that his easygoing demeanor was a positive trait. I wanted him to want to keep me safe, to be a little protective, not in a toxic or domineering way, which I would never want, but just enough to let me know that he thought I was his. Rather, everything simply flowed from him. He would simply shrug, say he hoped I was all right, and get on with his day if I vanished tomorrow. The thought that perhaps I wasn't as significant to him as I believed began to consume me. Perhaps he loved me the way he loved his favorite pair of sneakers, reliable, comfy, and interchangeable if they ever wore out in a calm, sensible way. That sounds absurd, doesn't it? However, I began to want evidence of his ardor, a spark, a response, anything that would demonstrate to me that I still had that profound emotional significance for him. I talked to him about it. Yes, I did. I thought maybe if I opened up and told Danny how I was feeling, together we could solve it. I decided that being honest was the best course of action, even if it wasn't an easy conversation to start. As usual, Danny listened quietly and without interjecting. I wasn't dismissed or made to feel foolish by him. Rather, he said he could relate to my perspective. However, he went on to share a personal story that I found very memorable. He claimed that he had always held the view that people would stay if they so desired, that being really envious or compulsive wouldn't matter because someone would still leave or, worse, cheat if they so choose. In a sense, it was rational, it made sense. Danny wasn't attempting to minimize my significance then. He simply had this perspective on relationships. He supported independence and trust, no dominance, no fixation, and no overclinging. I suppose I can't hold it against him because, to him, it was the healthiest way to love someone. I believed that after our sincere discussion, the matter was resolved. He told me that he didn't have to demonstrate his love for me by becoming possessive or jealous. I should be happy with it. I told myself it was the sensible, grown-up thing to do, wasn't it? Still, that tiny voice in my head that said he doesn't care enough kept bugging me. Of course, it wasn't true, but emotions don't always make sense. I made an effort to suppress it, to persuade myself that Danny's steady, stable love was preferable to the erratic, spectacular passion I believed I desired. However, I was unable to let it go, and I began making my mistakes, the foolish, impetuous choices that led to the current disaster. It started off as a simple notion, nothing major, just a gentle prod to see if I could get him to react in some way. When we were out with friends, I reminded myself that it was innocent flirting, a bit too bright of a smile, a little too loud of laughter at someone else's jokes, a touch on the arm here, a long look there, even though it was informal and nothing I thought would be offensive. I flirted with a few of his buddies. It's just a fun little game. I kept reminding myself, and it was all in good humor. I wasn't doing it for fun, though. My intention was to agitate Danny and see how he would respond. He initially merely appeared perplexed. He would give me this perplexed expression as if he didn't understand what I was doing. But he would quickly dismiss it, no resentment, no jealousy. Just Danny being his typical cool-headed, easygoing self, and that infuriated me for some reason. I realized this seems absurd, but his silence felt like a rejection. I had the impression that he didn't care about me, that I wasn't significant enough. I went into a spiral. I doubled down rather than taking a step back and considering my own actions. Maybe if I pushed hard enough, I'd finally get beyond that wall of composure. So I got more brash and blatant. I believed it to be a harmless game that I could control. I can now realize how poisonous that way of thinking was. My goal was to manipulate him into becoming someone he wasn't, not to mend our marriage. And that's when things truly started to go south, eventually. Danny sat me down and informed me that he didn't like my recent behavior, calling the attention-seeking and flirtation disrespectful to him and out of character for me. Rather than feeling guilty or sorry, I snapped. The truth, or the version of it I had persuaded myself to believe, was what I told him. I told him that I wanted to make him feel envious, and that I was important enough for him to become upset or furious. I informed him that I was tired of feeling uncared for by him. Danny told me that what I was doing was unfair to him and our relationship. But he didn't become upset. He claimed that I was attempting to make him into someone he wasn't, and worse, that my actions were causing our marriage to suffer. His statement ought to have served as a wake-up call for me, but instead of doing so, I became defensive and offended. He simply didn't get how I felt, I told myself, and if he truly loved me, he would want to show me how I needed to feel. I was simply enraged by his cool-headed, reasonable response. I desired passion and fire, not reasoning and reason. I grew bolder and more intent on getting a response from him. I began acting in ways that I knew would be inappropriate, such as consciously looking for circumstances that would irritate him, rather than merely flirting with random men. I began dressing more provocatively, going out longer, and making sure he was aware of the attention I was receiving from other men. Naturally, Danny, who was not blind, noticed. However, rather than responding as I had hoped, he appeared to solidify his composed attitude. It was as though he had made up his mind not to give me the satisfaction of a reaction. If I was going to act out, he stayed the same cool, collected Danny. Regardless of what I did or how hard I pushed, he would occasionally glance at me or make a joke to acknowledge my actions. But there was only Danny with his frustratingly composed face, no rage, jealousy, or passion. His first inaction just strengthened my resolve. I assumed he would break if I pressed more. However, it began to have the reverse effect over time. I began to feel desperate rather than in control or empowered. It felt like I was roaring into empty air as I threw all I had at him, even though I can now see how toxic and damaging my actions were at the time. All I could think about was how much I needed him to show me that he cared by giving me anything. And I suppose he came to the conclusion that he wouldn't stop me if I was determined to break us. I made every effort, I mean all of it, to go out with my pals. I would dress up, put on the most provocative and attractive clothes I could find, and make a great show of it. I would share images on social media with captions that I knew would make people wonder. But he would never respond. No accusations, no insults, no rage. He simply liked or made a simple comment in acknowledgement of the posts. I was furious at the lack of response. When I arrived home, I was at a loss for ideas, and my frustration increased with each failed attempt. I began to doubt myself. Was it not worth it to battle for me? Did he not find me attractive enough to make him jealous? I began to believe that Danny might not have cared because he didn't love me enough. My relationship with my boss had been becoming a bit too intimate at that point. Although I wouldn't admit it to myself at the time, I was actively promoting Greg's quite overt flirtation with me. In actuality, I no longer felt as though Danny was seeing me. I wanted him to take notice, exhibit concern, become envious, or express some sort of emotion. The tipping moment, Danny had proposed that the two of us go out to supper. In hindsight, I believe he was attempting to make amends, even if it was just a simple meal. He wanted to do something about the barrier between us, however, I turned him down. My employer had also invited me out to supper that evening. I immediately agreed with him when he claimed it was to commemorate the end of a significant project. It sounded harmless enough, didn't it? However, I knew in my heart that it was more about me garnering attention from the one person who had been giving me positive feedback lately than it was about celebrating my job. Greg had invited me and me alone without any other co-workers. Although that information bothered me, I chose to disregard it. I didn't want to think too much about it. I should have asked Danny to accompany me, but I chose not to. I lied instead. I informed him that there would be other colleagues present. I don't even know why I said it. Honestly, perhaps I said it to avoid the shame that was beginning to seep into me. I didn't provide any additional information and Danny didn't ask for it. I dismissed his question as though it were unimportant when he asked if he should accompany me. I informed him that it was merely a casual job matter and that it wasn't required. He encouraged me to enjoy myself and gave me a cheek kiss. But I could see he was a little uncertain. And that's when I began to feel angry. I hoped he would push back. I wanted him to become agitated and insist on accompanying me. However, he simply accepted it. And I was more irritated by his composure and lack of response than I wanted to acknowledge. Did he not value my time? Was I really so inconsequential? Greg was his typical endearing self during dinner, extremely effusive, overly complimentary, and sure, occasionally a bit touchy-feely. But he turned it up a level that evening. He gave me more praise than ever before, demonstrating how fortunate Danny must be to have me in his life. At times, the comments were almost offensive. But I leaned into them rather than putting an end to them as I should have. I chuckled. I took his jokes a bit too personally, let him refill my glass a bit too frequently, and let the attention wash over me, giving me a renewed sense of importance. Even though I could have simply gone to bed when supper was over, I stayed for one more drink. I hesitated for a moment when Greg offered to drive me home. I had already decided that I wasn't doing anything wrong, so I didn't have to think about it for long. That evening, Danny was watching a movie on the couch when I came in the door. He asked how supper had gone, looking up at me with a slight, composed smile. I felt so nauseous that I could hardly look him in the eyes. Even though the shame was more intense than ever, I chose to ignore it. I went straight to bed after giving him a hazy response that it was just work, and nothing significant. I knew I couldn't conceal the strain, so I attempted to act as though nothing had happened. The following morning, Danny saw, as he always did, but first remained silent. He wasn't a confrontational person, so he didn't pose any pointed questions. However, I sensed the shift in the atmosphere. A few days passed, and I made the mistake of mentioning Greg again and how it had been just us that had gone to dinner. I spoke casually as if it were insignificant and had no real significance. When Danny eventually brought it up later that evening, I realized how much it bothered him. Rather than inviting Greg, he questioned me directly if I had gone out with him alone. I was unsure of how to respond. I wanted to be honest with him, telling him that I had wanted Greg to make me feel wanted and that I hadn't wanted him there. However, I did lie instead. He knew Greg wasn't interested in attending those events anyhow, so I told him it was simply work and had no significance. I lied once more by claiming that I was unaware that co-workers were not invited, but it was the expression in Danny's eyes, not just the untruth, that bothered me. He wasn't upset, at least not in the manner I had anticipated. No, he felt let down. He simply accepted my explanation and moved on without challenging me or pressing me more, and I hoped, or at least assumed, that would be the end of it. Things changed in ways I couldn't comprehend throughout the course of the following several weeks. After that day, although he wasn't chilly or unfriendly, Danny wasn't the same either. It seemed as though an invisible wall had been erected between us, and I was unable to determine how to get beyond it. He no longer inquired about my day in the manner that had always made me feel valued. Even the quiet moments before bed, when he would reach out for me, hold me close, and reassure me that everything was well, seemed to have gone. As did the small talk we used to have. He looked to be physically present but emotionally far away. And despite my best efforts, nothing seemed to be able to connect with him. I started to get anxious. This was not my preference. This was not how I wanted things to end. I wanted him to defend me, and however, he was moving more and farther away from me. Despite my concern, I began overcompensating by inquiring about his day more frequently than usual and arranging small surprises to catch his eye. However, none of it was successful. He grew farther away the harder I tried. I had the impression that I was pursuing a ghost of him, and no matter what I tried, I was never able to bring him back to me. One night, after we had been silent for another evening, I finally had enough. I sobbed and pleaded with him to explain what was wrong, to say anything at all that would explain why he had distanced himself from me so thoroughly. I felt like I was punched in the gut by his reaction. He claimed to be finished. I was stunned. How could it have happened this far without my noticing? His knowing that I had gone out to dinner with my employer alone without informing him was the tipping point after everything that had transpired, and I couldn't believe it. Not the late nights, not the flirting, not the fact that I'd been pushing his limits, but just the fact that I'd opted to go out by myself rather than with him. He claimed that he wasn't the right person for me. I made an effort to persuade him that it wasn't just that one night and that the entire period before that dinner had been chaotic. He wouldn't have it, though. It wasn't just that dinner, he informed me, but everything that had preceded it. He thought I was attempting to make him into someone he wasn't, someone he couldn't be, and he felt degraded. He tried to give me space and told me how patient he had been, but he was unable to maintain his facade any longer. He claimed that I made him feel as though he was never good enough for me, and that he didn't feel loved or needed, that he simply couldn't continue living that way, and that I had been searching for someone else. I pleaded with him to change his mind. I assured him that I would transform. I promised him that I would no longer try to make him feel envious, stop doing things that made him uncomfortable, and stop looking to other people for approval. I assured him that I would stop at nothing to repair what I had damaged and preserve. However, he didn't react the way I had hoped. He informed me that I didn't truly desire him and that I wanted someone he wasn't, someone he could never be. After giving me a look that was almost resignation-like, he packed his belongings and left the following day. Since then, I've tried everything. I've begged for another chance via phone calls, texts, and messages. I assured him that I would stop attempting to irritate him, quit my job if necessary, and take any necessary action to make things right. However, nothing has been successful. First update: the last few weeks have been extremely hectic. All of this was not my intention, but here we are. I really want to admit that I was mistaken. I tossed away everything that was meaningful to me. I don't require constant reminders of it. I understand, I know, I was a complete moron. Indeed, the adage, you never know what you have until it's gone. It's quite true and hits close to home. It's impossible for me to put into words how much I miss him. How do I even begin? This has been an incredible roller coaster without him. I feel utterly miserable, and knowing that I am solely to blame makes it hurt much more. All I can do is cry every night. I've been watching our favorite movies, his favorite movies, while gorging myself on containers of ice cream as if it were some kind of comfort food. It's unbelievable that I'm here by myself. The fact that he is proceeding with the divorce doesn't help either. He takes it seriously, and the more I consider it, the more I see how long he's been done. Looking back, I can't help but feel that he had already made up his mind when he departed the very following day. He had been preparing. Why didn't I anticipate it? He obviously wants a divorce now. He has no desire to make things better. He's not interested in therapy. Couples counseling is not something he wants. All he wants is for me to sign the fucking paperwork and release him. Hearing him declare that he's finished is like receiving a kick to the gut. He informed me that I had made him miserable for so long that he could never return to that state, and that he was worn out from trying. He said that, and it broke my heart. I wanted something else, he said, and that was okay, because he wanted something else, too. He claimed that he couldn't find the kind of tranquility he desired, and that he was entitled to with me. And what do you know? He's correct. Now I see that. I am unable to solve it. I am unable to improve it. To be honest, I've been acting like a zombie for the past few weeks. I'm unable to concentrate on anything, much less work. My performance at work has completely collapsed, and I currently hate my employer. I can hardly meet his gaze. I promptly reported him to HR when he attempted to approach me the other day. I'm still awaiting the outcome of it. I'm stuck in this awful work with no drive, no motivation, and no sense of purpose anymore, as if things couldn't get any worse. Then there's my family. The whole thing. Even my parents and other mutual acquaintances have expressed their belief that he was correct to leave me. Yes, they have all taken his side. They claim to have known that I would eventually push him away. And now look at us, they assured me that this was not a surprising conclusion. Why didn't they speak up earlier if they were aware of all of that? Why? How come they didn't warn me? They waited until it was too late, but why? It's really annoying, and now that the harm has been done, it seems like they're all adding to it. I tried to get in touch with his parents in the hopes that they would assist me in talking to him, but they have completely cut me off. His mother said she had informed him that I was a crazy person and would not talk to me. I'm sorry. Really, the second update is that, well, it has been a long time. Life has been, to put it mildly, crazy. First, the divorce, which is undoubtedly on everyone's mind. It's done, all right, completed, over, no turning back. I can't go back in time and fix my faults. At the courthouse, it was over in less than an hour, in a matter of minutes. Everything I had fought so hard to create, my marriage, my entire life, was gone. I sat there immediately thinking, wow, this is it. It seemed unreal. Like I was seeing it unfold while floating outside of myself. There wasn't even any controversy about alimony, property, or anything similar. It hurts that I wasn't eligible for spousal assistance, but to be honest, I don't want to discuss it because it only makes me feel worse. So, yes, I have officially closed that chapter of my life. I can't even begin to explain how much it aches. I feel like my chest is giving out every time I consider it. He is missed. He is sorely missed. All I can do is hope that I could go back in time, tell him how sorry I am, and reverse every foolish choice I made because I regret everything I did to push him away. However, there is no turning back. I now live in this reality. In addition, I resigned from my position. Yes, that unfulfilling job I detested to the core of my being. At last, I said, fuck it, and left. Given that I still have expenses to pay, it was probably not the best course of action. In fact, it was blatantly foolish, but I was at my breaking point. I detested the place in every way. The people, the labor, and the soul-crushing boredom were all things I detested. I already feel like a zombie, but it made me feel even more like one, so I gave up, pay my bills. I took a part-time job and made the bold decision to launch my own company. It sounds crazy, don't you think? Someone attempting to construct anything from the ground up like myself, who can hardly put her life together. However, I simply needed something, anything, to regain some sense of control over my life. Even though it's still tiny, barely off the ground, it belongs to me, sincerely. It's the only thing preventing me from totally collapsing, and I work on it every day. However, my living situation is a nightmare in and of itself. Now that I have a roommate, I can assure you that she is the worst. I can't stand her. She is filthy, disorganized, and utterly rude. She is the reason the apartment is usually a mess. And whenever I ask her to tidy up after herself, she always tells me to do it myself. I'm thinking, what the devil? I'm not the one who leaves garbage around or dirty dishes in the sink for days. It enrages me. I'm already counting down the days until the lease expires. I can't wait to leave myself or to eject her, since this flat still feels like one of my final connections to Danny. I would ideally stay, but she has wrecked everything for me. I would gladly pack my bags if staying meant enduring her foolishness for another year, clinging to a location that serves as a painful reminder of all I've lost is not worth my tranquility. I'm now divorced, miserable, and attempting to put my life back together day by day. It's something, but not much. We'll see how things develop. To be honest, it means something to me to cope with all of my emotional baggage and stay here, to read my narrative through to the end, even when I've been at my worst. It's strange to know that others are interested enough to follow along. Perhaps it's because I wanted someone to vent to and chat to. I appreciate if you have read this far. It's been a long, messy, painful journey. And while I don't have a happy ending to share, not yet anyway, just knowing that someone out there listened to me when I felt entirely alone meant more than I can put into words. I appreciate you being here, even if you are only there to see the train catastrophe that is my life. Thank you.